Hi there, I'm Marla. For 17 years, my family laughed behind my back, called me crazy, poor, invisible. But then they stepped onto my island and realized I'm worth $11.6 billion. They thought I was just some girl in a trailer. But what if I told you the only apology I ever got was ghostwritten? Why do families rewrite history just to erase someone they claim to love? What time are you hearing this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment. I'd love to know who's out there. I stood on the helipad, wind tugging at my dress, watching the sleek black cars snake down the curved driveway one by one. The Rolls-Royces glistened under the sun like moving obsidian. Precision, timing, drama. My family didn't know it yet, but they were about to walk into a story I'd been scripting for 17 years. From the moment their shoes touched the marble dock, my name carved discreetly into the stone, they were already in my world. Every pine tree manicured, every window gleaming, every scent, sea salt and jasmine, chosen. This wasn't a reunion. This was an unveiling. I caught sight of my father stepping out first, his signature stiff posture barely masking confusion. Then my mother, holding on to Brent's arm too tightly. Darcy arrived last, chin high, scanning the area like she expected someone famous to step out and greet her. She didn't know. It was me. "Welcome," I said, voice cool. "I hope your journey was smooth. Dinner is at 7. I trust your accommodations will be adequate." Their eyes flitted, desperate for someone else to be in charge. But there was no one. Just my assistant, Emma, clipboard in hand, and a phalanx of staff who answered only to me. I turned and walked toward the yacht without looking back. They followed in stunned silence, boarding the vessel that would take them deeper into my design. Screens on the yacht came alive, curated clips of my company's global milestones, flashes of conferences, tech awards, interviews. Their reflections hovered over my face on screen. "Is that—" Brent started. Darcy muttered, "She's showing off." Father didn't say a word. But 24 hours earlier, they hadn't been this quiet. The Forbes article had dropped at dawn. Headline: "The $11.6 billion woman you've never heard of. Meet Marla Thorne." Our family group chat detonated. Darcy: "This has to be a joke." Dad: "Is she paying to get attention now?" Brent: "Wait. Is this real?" Mom tried to call. I didn't answer. Chris, my cousin who never picked sides, finally did. "You planned this, didn't you?" I answered, "You'll find out soon enough." Back in the present, the yacht approached the main entrance. A massive screen rippled to life on the dock, displaying, "Welcome to Thompson Isle." A second later, the text glitched, shimmered, and transformed. Thorn Isle. My signature scrawled underneath in gold. Darcy gasped. Brent blinked fast, as if he could unsee it. Mother's lips parted, but no sound came. As they walked through the resort's glass atrium, their shoes echoed against imported marble. The media wall played a timeline of my achievements. One corner displayed my investment firm's reach. Another was an art gallery featuring pieces I personally collected, many once owned by the institutions that rejected me. I turned slightly, just enough for my father to hear. Funny how some legacies start with silence. His jaw tensed. "You're overcompensating." I smiled. "You haven't seen anything yet?" Emma met me near the dining room entrance. "Everything's in place," she whispered. I looked at the long dining table, set for 15. Silverware shined under the chandelier like a warning. Each chair had a small leather-bound folder resting atop the charger plate. "Make sure they open those before the entree," I said. Emma nodded. The door creaked open, letting in a draft that smelled faintly of salt and tension. Dinner wasn't the first course. The truth was, the ocean spread out before me like a secret I no longer needed to keep. I held the champagne glass, but didn't drink. The bubbles danced, alive with celebration that didn't belong to me. My mother's fake smile from earlier still lingered, carved into my thoughts like a paper cut that refused to close. And beneath that smile was the question I never got to ask: when did I stop being their daughter? 16 years ago, the air was thick with late spring humidity and achievement. My cap and gown still carried the scent of lavender and ambition. I remember glancing at the faces at the table, my family dressed in muted celebration, cameras ready, wine already flowing. Then my father rose with a glint in his eye and tapped his glass. To Brent, who's already secured an executive placement at Morgan and Sons, he began, voice rich and proud. And to Darcy, our artist of light, may her gallery opening shine as brightly as her spirit. Everyone clapped, except me. I smiled, lips stiff, as if someone had poured glue inside my cheeks. My name was never spoken, not once. The toast ended. The silence that followed was mine to wear. That night, I checked the family photo gallery in the hallway near Dad's study. My graduation picture, gone. The frame was still there, empty. No one said a word. Weeks later, at the university alumni event, a professor who once mentored me pulled me aside gently. "There's been a change, Marla. Your name, it's no longer on the honorary board? Quietly removed? I'm sorry, I wasn't part of the decision." I didn't respond. I nodded like a robot learning grief for the first time. It wasn't until months later, in a forgotten email archive, that I found the truth. My father had written the university himself. The subject line, "Request for board adjustment." His note was clinical, surgical. "Marla Thorne no longer reflects the principles or values of the Thompson family legacy. We request removal from all ceremonial affiliations." He didn't just cut me off, he tried to rewrite me out of history. He didn't want to forget me. He wanted the world to. This morning, just before they landed on the island, I got a message from the same university. "Marla, congratulations. Your honorary board recognition has been reinstated automatically due to your recent media features. Welcome back." I deleted it. No hesitation. I don't need their recognition. I don't need to be re-added to something I built without them. My legacy doesn't hang on a wall, they're standing in it. Dinner tonight was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that burns just beneath the skin. My father lifted his glass again, his voice rehearsed like always. To family and new beginnings. The hypocrisy tasted like ash. I didn't lift my glass. I didn't speak. Inside, I heard myself think. I've heard that toast before, and I remember what came after. I ran a finger under the edge of my dinner plate, feeling for the envelope. Thin, white, weighted. It was there, the beginning of everything they never expected. Brent lounged across from me, legs crossed like he owned the air. My father sipped brandy with his usual grin, nodding as Brent rattled off his newest venture, some absurd idea about wine-infused dog treats. "It's untapped," Brent said, proud. "People love dogs, and they love wine. Combine them. Boom, emotional engagement." I didn't flinch. Just swirled my drink and let the heat rise slow, steady. 10 years ago, I had stood in this same room, same marble floors, same dismissive air, with an actual product in my hands. I'd poured myself into every page of that pitch, an immersive digital ownership platform, ahead of its time, but built on solid tech. I was excited, hopeful, naive. My father skimmed the deck, then leaned back. "We invest in substance, Marla, not science fiction fantasies." A smirk. Brent walked in halfway through and got a handshake. "Let's schedule something next week," Dad said to him before turning back to me. "We'll pass." I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I just packed up my things and left. But inside, something had cracked. Clean, quiet, permanent. The eviction notice came a week later. My landlord said my check had bounced. I'd put every last cent into that prototype, betting on the one pitch that mattered. It wasn't just rejection, I remember thinking as I walked out of that empty apartment, box in arms. It was erasure, again. Years passed. I built anyway, found scraps of belief in strangers. And then one day, by chance, or maybe irony, I saw it. An old investor newsletter forwarded by mistake. My father's friends had passed my pitch deck around, laughed about it, called it nerd fiction. Except one of them didn't laugh. Hayden. He saw something. Quietly, through a shell company, he funded it. No fanfare, no strings, just belief. That project? 800 million in returns. The same deck they mocked, the same woman they ignored. Now, back in that lounge, Brent was waving his arms. "We're in talks with influencers already," he said. "We'll have dog sommeliers." My father tapped notes into his phone, nodding along like Brent was Mozart with a chew toy. I took one long sip and said, "Does this one come with a PowerPoint? Or just barking enthusiasm?" The silence landed hard. I didn't wait. I stood, heels echoing like punctuation, and walked straight out. No one followed. Outside, I pulled out my phone and typed a single message. "Confirm the transfer of 2% equity in Thomson Interactive to Hayden Capital." They earned it. They'd laugh less if they knew the full number behind that 2%, but that wasn't the point. Gratitude was a sharper weapon than revenge, and I knew exactly how to wield it. At the end of the hallway, a framed document hung crooked on the wall. I stopped. It was my pitch deck. No title, no value, just ink on faded cardstock, still unsigned. The sun hadn't broken fully over the ridge, and already the air was thick with salt and something meaner. I stood barefoot on the balcony, cradling a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. On my phone, Darcy's podcast played like a wound that wouldn't close. "She's always been just a girl from a trailer with delusions of grandeur," her voice crackled through the speaker, smug and slick with superiority. "On my island, using my Wi-Fi." 16 years ago, she said something similar, only then it was meant to draw laughs from cousins clutching champagne flutes. We were at Aunt Marie's garden brunch, all floral dresses and fake civility. Darcy stood in the center, hands on hips. "What's the address again, Marla? Tornado Row?" A beat. "No, wait. Hurricane Avenue?" Laughter. Sharp, echoing. Even Mom smiled. I didn't. I swallowed the heat crawling up my throat and focused on the edge of the tablecloth, where the wind picked up the lace like it was embarrassed for me. I promised myself then, next time they laughed, it would cost them. This morning, I slid open a folder titled Proof of Irony. My tech team had crafted a near-perfect AI audio overlay. Darcy's voice, indistinguishable, declaring me a visionary. Marla Thorne changed the industry. Her courage built bridges no one dared cross. Her words, my narrative. At noon, the ad went live. In her own tone and rhythm, Darcy hailed me as a genius, spliced expertly over a montage of my company's milestones. A closing line whispered like a secret. Even her loudest critics know the truth, deep down. Within hours, our site traffic spiked 800%. My name trended globally. Investors sent emojis. Articles used words like humble beginnings and iconic turnaround. And Darcy? She stormed into the villa, eyes wild. "You crossed a line, Marla." I didn't look up from my tablet. "It's not defamation if it's your voice." "You manipulated it?" "Sure. And I learned from the best, remember?" I met her eyes then, slow and steady. "Also, you signed the waiver on day one. Full media consent." Dad tried to interrupt, raising a hand like he was still in charge. "Girls, let's not—" "This island," I said calmly, "records everything, every word, every laugh. You're not guests, you're case studies." Silence, like smoke, stretching long and uneasy. That night the ad played again, this time on the outdoor projection screen over dinner. Darcy didn't come to the table. Mom stared at her fork the whole time. Brent asked for wine, but later, as I passed the hall to my room, I saw her. Darcy, standing in the dark, watching my door like it had wronged her personally. People say losing to a stranger is one thing, but losing to the girl you humiliated? That rots the inside. The name Mom lit up my screen like a bad omen. I stared at it, thumb hovering. 15 years of silence, broken by a name that had once meant safety. I pressed accept. "Marla, honey, how have you been?" Her voice was warm, syrupy, artificial. I waited. She cleared her throat. "Listen, your brother. Brent's working on this amazing idea. A new kind of gym, very visionary, very now. but he needs a little push, just until the first round of funding comes through. I said nothing. She continued, undeterred. You've always been good with money. I told him, Marla's probably in a position to help out. Just a small loan. Still, no apology, no acknowledgement, no mention of birthdays missed or calls ignored. Just a script. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, each rotation slicing through a memory. 16 years ago, Brent broke Dad's truck window with a baseball bat. I took the blame. Brent failed algebra 3 times. I tutored him, even when I had midterms. I was the fixer, the background player, the human glue that never got thanked, just used until dry. And then college. The check they wrote me for tuition. The one that bounced. I still had it. I opened a drawer and pulled out 2 things, a blank check and the old one they canceled. Same amount, different intent. I scribbled on a fresh envelope and slipped the old check inside. No note. Just 4 words on the back. Thought you'd remember. 3 days later, Brent called. You think this is funny? I leaned back in my chair. You asked for money. I gave you history. He barked something about entitlement, about grudges, about how I was too successful to be so bitter. Mom called next. That check was ancient history, Marla. It's cruel to dig that up now. No, I said. Cruel was pretending it never mattered. And I hung up. Later that evening, I caught movement outside the guest house on the security feed. Brent. He wasn't knocking. He was pacing, angry, entitled. At one point, he kicked the door. Hard. I didn't flinch. I pressed record and watched in silence. I'd warned them gently, with distance, with grace. But apparently, whispers weren't enough. I reached for my phone and opened a secure message thread. I warned them with silence, I typed. Now they'll hear me loud and clear. The chandelier above the dining table cast a gold sheen on their uncertain faces. Every fork was perfectly aligned, every wine glass precisely placed. The gallery room was silent except for the clinking of crystal and the shallow breaths of people who had come expecting forgiveness and instead found formality. I stood at the head of the table, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass, untouched. They thought this was a dinner. I knew better. At each setting, an envelope. Thick, weighted. Their names printed in crisp black font, centered with surgical precision. They reached for them slowly. Brent tore his open first, confident it was some gift, perhaps a financial update or inheritance detail. But no. Inside were timelines, emails he'd ignored, screenshots of business plans I'd sent, annotated and unresponded, texts with just checking in that never saw a reply. Darcy blinked hard as she turned pages. My mother's lips thinned into a flat line. My father didn't touch his yet, his silence loud. This is selective, Brent muttered. I stepped forward. My voice was quiet, but it filled the space. You used to call me emotional, so I brought the facts. I walked the length of the table, each step a memory I no longer needed to justify. Every proposal I sent, every idea, every plea, ignored. I stopped behind my mother. This is your legacy too, not just mine. No one spoke. I let the silence stretch long enough to bruise. Then I clicked the remote in my pocket. The far wall shimmered and shifted, transforming into a panoramic screen. Their own faces stared back at them, video playback of tonight's dinner, from multiple angles, their reactions, their expressions, captured in high definition. You don't have to believe me, I said. Just believe yourselves. My father leaned forward. You bugged the room? I tilted my head. Number U walked into my house. It records everything. Brent shoved back his chair. Darcy slammed her folder shut. My mother looked like she might be sick. One of the cousins, Dana, whispered, Jesus Christ, under her breath and stood up, knocking her wine over. Someone cried, but it wasn't from guilt. It was the shame of being caught not caring. I turned the footage off. You think this is the end? I asked, voice even. Tomorrow's the gallery opening. I suggest you dress for exposure." They didn't respond. Couldn't. I stepped away, heels clicking like a countdown. They thought tonight was the climax. They haven't seen the art yet. Since the dinner, the villa felt like glass stretched too tight. Any sound could shatter it. Conversations clipped at the edges. No one looked each other in the eyes. Every smile was an apology, and every silence a confession too afraid to form words. Darcy wore confidence like it still mattered. She strolled through the hallway humming, forcing a rhythm into a house that had none. I let her hum. I let them all perform. But tonight, there would be no curtain to hide behind. I asked my father to meet me on the gallery rooftop. No assistants, no files, just the two of us. The night air was salt and quiet. Above us, stars burned cold. I leaned against the ledge, fingers curling around the railing like it might pull something real out of me. "You think I did all this to win?" I asked, not looking at him. He stayed silent. "I did it to survive." He shifted but didn't speak. I could hear his breath, uneven. "You mocked my silence for years, thought it was weakness. But silence kept me from screaming. It kept me from falling." I turned to him. His posture was rigid, but his hands trembled. "I didn't build this island to prove something to you. I built it to hear myself think again. 16 years ago, I stood on a bridge with my toes hanging over steel. The wind pushed hard, almost helpfully. No one had called. No one had texted. No one noticed. I remember thinking, not about death, but about what it would feel like to not be erased anymore. The next morning, I booked a motel under a fake name. That's where the first line of my business plan was written. Later that evening, I found my mother alone in the lounge, pretending to read. I sat down across from her, and before she could speak, I said it. "Golden Gate, October." I had a note in my coat pocket. She froze. The book slipped slightly in her lap. "I wrote your name first," I added. "Not in anger, just sequence." She reached for my hand. I let her get close, then pulled away. "I'm still here, but not because of you, in spite of you." Her lips trembled. The silence after was the loudest thing either of us had heard. Later, I passed Brent sitting outside, head in hands. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and couldn't face me. Darcy tried to say something. Her lips parted, then closed. I didn't pause for either of them. Inside my room, I stood before the mirror. No makeup, no performance, just me. I had always feared I was cracked somewhere no one could fix, but now I saw it, not broken, armored. I was halfway into brushing my hair when I heard the envelope slide under my door. I picked it up without bending. The handwriting was shaky. His. I didn't know. I was wrong. No tears, no smile. Just breathe. Maybe some ghosts can't be exorcised, but you can learn to live with them. The morning after the rooftop, the island felt different. Not softer, just quieter. The kind of silence that waits. I was sipping black coffee when I heard the knock. My mother stood there, holding a folded envelope. She didn't say anything, just handed it to me like she was passing off a fragile truth. "From your father," she whispered. The paper was heavier than it looked. I unfolded it slowly, expecting cold words or maybe just another avoidance. But the handwriting was his. And the words. They were everything I had once begged the universe for. He spoke of regret, of choosing pride over presence. He admitted to seeing only what he wanted to, and to punishing me for not fitting into the version of a daughter he could control. He wrote that he was proud of my resilience, and that maybe if he had listened then, he wouldn't be watching from behind now. I didn't cry, but something loosened in my chest, like armor shifting, not falling, but adjusting. So he finally saw me. I didn't tell anyone, let the letter sit like a secret stone in my pocket. But word travels. Brent tried to laugh it off, said, "Next he'll be hugging trees." Darcy stayed unusually quiet. My mother avoided eye contact. I held on to the moment until later that evening, when I went to grab a book and found her tablet glowing on the counter. The screen hadn't locked. I tapped it to dim the brightness and saw the file name, Draft, Tom's Apology. I opened it, word for word, line for line, even the final sentence. I hope it's not too late to become your father again. My chest tightened. I stood there in the kitchen, feeling like someone had replaced the air with static. You wrote it? I asked, voice low. My mother turned from the sink, froze. He never would have done it, she whispered, tears rising. I just wanted you to have something. The betrayal landed harder than silence ever had. At least before, I knew where I stood. Now I had believed. I took the letter that night and walked down to the beach. The stars were blurred in the tide. I read it one last time, then fed the flame with it. Watched the pages curl, blacken, and scatter. So maybe love from this family was always fiction, but at least now I know the author. I didn't need them to say sorry. I needed them to stop pretending they ever meant it. At the estate's final dinner, I wore silver, no makeup, hair pulled back, power in restraint. Halfway through the meal, I stood, held a small card between two fingers. I have one last announcement for you all tomorrow, something permanent. No theatrics, no rage, just precision. Their faces locked in stillness. Good. Cut to black. I stood alone at the shoreline, the sea licking my feet like a final applause. The island was quiet, eerily so. No plates clinking, no forced laughter echoing through the halls, just the faint rustle of wind pushing against curtains and the soft hum of my own breath. I walked the length of the estate barefoot, each room echoing back decisions I had already made. This time there was no ache, just stillness. The atrium was filled by noon. They came, as expected, some hoping for another fight, others for some final blessing. I didn't offer either. I didn't bring you here for vengeance, I said, voice clear, unwavering. I brought you here to see. No slideshow, no documents, no expose, just eye contact. Silence stretched longer than any monologue could have lasted. Brent crossed his arms. Darcy looked down at her phone, pretending distraction. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. I've signed over the estate, I continued. It will now serve as a retreat for women who've been erased, by families, by systems, by silence. Brent scoffed. You could have just written a check. I looked at him the way you look at something you once pitied but now forget to fear. And you could have tried accountability. Darcy said nothing, just stood and left. My mother's eyes stayed on me. She didn't blink. My father didn't show. Later, my mother approached in the hallway. She offered a fragile hug I didn't return. Did it make you feel better? She asked softly. No, I said, but it stopped it from getting worse. Weeks passed. Brent emailed a single line. Sorry if I was part of it. He was. I didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't some climactic scene. It doesn't come with sweeping music or shared tears under dim lights. It's quiet. It's a door you close without slamming, a memory you stop feeding, a phone you no longer check. I spent the following morning walking the shoreline. This island, my inheritance of pain and power, felt different now, lighter, less burdened by what it was built to confront. I wasn't lonely. I was just uninterrupted. I no longer needed them to hear me. I needed to hear myself. A week later, a young woman arrived. She stepped off the boat with hesitant eyes and an old backpack clutched to her chest. Are you the owner? She asked, voice small. I smiled. I'm just someone who used to need this place. She nodded, unsure, but followed me inland. As the boat pulled away behind us, the island caught the golden light just right, like a memory, not a monument. For the first time, I didn't look back. Sometimes survival isn't loud. It's quiet choices made in private. If there's one thing I've learned through it all, it's this. Silence isn't weakness. It can be clarity, power, even peace. I spent years chasing the love I thought I needed from people who only saw what they wanted. But the moment I stopped proving my worth to others, I finally saw it for myself. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, what did you do to reclaim your voice? Let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story touched something deep in you. Or just tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's out there listening. And hey, if this video made you think, reflect, or even breathe differently, subscribe. There's more story where this came from. Or